I can't tell you when I came to faith. It happened very early. My mom was a Christian. My dad became a more mature Christian. He was a Christmas and Easter Catholic during most of his life. And later on, I gave him a Bible. He went through it about 4 or 5 times, and he really became a Christian, a knowledgeable Christian man, and died that way. And it was just a tremendously uplifting thing for me to see as an adult, the way his faith developed over time. After the service, I went to business school, that school that produced these guys that went to Goldman Sachs and screwed the world in '09. When I left Harvard, I had a choice to go into the service industry like 95% of the people leaving, or go into manufacturing. I chose to do the latter, one, because I found it more interesting, and second, I figured it wouldn't be nearly as competitive. Ended up at a company called FMC Corp, a Chicago-based company, and worked with them about 6 years, and then the guy who hired me into FMC left, and about a year later, he gave me a call and he wanted some help with some of the businesses that he was managing, and I went to Houston to do that. About a year after that, the parent company, AMCA International, that doesn't exist today, made a huge acquisition for them in Milwaukee of the Coring Company, which was a construction equipment and other equipment business, about $600 million in size in 1980, about 12 divisions. And my boss and I were basically brought up to try to figure out what to do with these businesses, some that were good and some that weren't so good. And our business hit these very significant points of development over a 25-year period. I needed to have 3 years to build a balance sheet. I said, if I could get 3 years of a decent economy, then I could take a recession. And this business was a very cyclical business. And when the recession hit, it would go down 35, 40%. And we knew we were going to get recession, so we needed to build our balance sheet, which was 100% debt at the time we purchased it in 1985, December of '85. We got 4 years. And in the last year, I brought in my Japanese licensee as a minority investor. He paid a nice price at the peak of the market. And Vince Martin, who had hired me twice, was interested, and we brought in him in as well as an investor. And those 2 decisions were very, very costly over the years. Probably cost me about $15 to $20 million to get these guys out. But the important thing is, it built our balance sheet. We had a recession in 1990, significant one. We increased our engineering investment by about 35% during this recession, and we came out of this recession in a very strong way. We took John Deere out of the manufacturing business relative to control valves for the tractor, and we started a trajectory of growth that was very, very substantial. Within about 6 years, 7 years of buying the company, we went from $20 million to $100 million, and we started looking at a company that had the potential to grow in a very fast way. At that point in time, in '96, I went to China. We had been exploring the Chinese market for a number of years, and every time we came back, I had a gentleman that would go there for me. He would say, it's just not ready. It's just not ready. Well, in '96, he came back and said, it's time for you to go see it. So I went over, took a look at it, and immediately made a decision that we needed to have a presence there. So we put in a sales and service organization and spent 2 years trying to sell things in China with just very little success. So I went there in '98, said, well, we're not going to be successful unless we build a factory here and demonstrate that we can make product here. So we built a factory, no customers, equipped it, and then we spent really the next 10 years slowly, very slowly, building up the business. And we finally got to about $8 million in 2008. We were starting to see a crack and getting into some major applications, and we budgeted a very strong 2009. Of course, the world fell apart in 2009. And we had, at this point, businesses not only in China. I had put a new business, just opened up a factory in India. So we had a pretty heavily capitalized business in China. We just capitalized a business in India. We were having problems with our union in Waukesha, so I made the decision to build another factory in the United States in Iowa. So all of a sudden we had this recession, and the recession for us wasn't a normal recession. Our global markets went down 50% overnight almost, and we were just chasing it. I mean, we'd make cuts, and they weren't enough. The next quarter we'd have to make other cuts, and from basically the fourth quarter of '08 through mid-'09, our markets were just falling so fast, we just didn't know where the bottom was going to be. So God had been really good to us, and one of the messages, now flipping over to the faith walk, that I want you to think about today as I talk is the nudging that God does for us. And sometimes it's a nudge. For me, there have been times where it's been more than a nudge in terms of what he wants you to do. When we founded HUSCO, one of the key values we set forth is that we would use HUSCO success to make the world a better place. Now, we did that when we owed $15 million and had no equity. But we realized that owning a business entailed having a different level of responsibility than being a corporate employee. So we early on set that as part of the fundamental values of our business. And I became involved in a number of nonprofits and participated with them. Then in the mid-'90s, actually a little bit later than that, early 2000s, I got a letter. Now, I get 30 to 50 of these letters a day asking for money, and they're opened up by my secretary, and then I glance through them. I read them over a trash can, and it takes me about 10 minutes to go through 50 letters. So you know I don't spend a lot of time. But there was one of these letters that just caught my attention, so I just put it aside. And it was on my desk for about 6 weeks, and then I was heading to Europe, and whenever I make a European or international trip, I clean off my desk. So I looked at this thing, kept on staring at me, and I went over to the head of HR and said, look, this is about a school in inner city Milwaukee that I haven't heard of. Will you go check it out? Which she did. And I came back about 2 weeks later. She came into my office real bubbly and said, Gus, this is something you got to see. So I went down and I started a relationship with the school. It's called Bruce Guadalupe School. It's part of the United Community Center, which was a good school at the time, but not a great school. It was a choice school. We had a voucher system in Milwaukee, and I got involved on the board. And over the years, the first 5 years, the performance was good, but never at national standards, and never got the feeling that they were getting the best out of these kids. And then one year, during a particularly bad set of scores, I looked at the executive director, who was Walter Saab, and said, Walter, have you ever considered summer school, mandatory summer school? And he said, no. I said, well, you think about it. This was in November. December, I came back to the board meeting and asked him. He said, well, we thought about it. It might be feasible. So I said, well, you give me a plan. In January, he gave me a plan. I said, this is interesting. Could you put some numbers to it? In February, he put the numbers to it. And it cost about $100,000 a year. And I told him, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to do a 3-year experiment. I will raise the money, the $300,000, myself and with some friends, and commit to doing so. So if you start the summer school that year, which they did, and it fundamentally changed the trajectory of education at this school. 70% of the gap between urban education, schools in an urban environment and suburban environment, can be attributed to the regression that happens in the summer. And it's just obvious if you look at what kids do in the city in the summer. It's mostly bad, whereas our children in a suburban environment get all sorts of opportunities to either be in athletics or other things to keep their minds stimulated. And they do get some recession as well, but not near the regression that takes place in the inner city. And Hopkins and Harvard did a study that was published in Time magazine about 2.5 years ago, which documented, and 70% of the difference by 8th grade is due to just summer. Now, I didn't know that at the time, but intuitively, I knew that there was major regression going on. So we put it in place. I called my friend Dennis and hit him up. I think it was $50,000 at the time, maybe $75,000. And in less than 10 phone calls, I got commitments for the $300,000. And we started on this journey. And ultimately, at the end of 3 years, we went from becoming a choice school to charter. We got more money for doing that, and we institutionalized the summer school. And this school has become, in fact, last year got an award for the best charter school in Wisconsin. Just a tremendous school, basically at or exceeds state averages in virtually every subject today. And these are 99% Hispanic kids, usually coming in not speaking English into kindergarten. And by the end of 8th grade, they're doing better than the average school 8th grader in Wisconsin. Over the last 9 years, we've come up with one of these hairy, audacious goals where we said, you know, if we can get 1 million kids into evangelical Christian schools in these countries where the total population is only about 25 to 30 million people, there's an opportunity to fundamentally change these countries. Taken to a tipping point where some of these people that graduate from these schools can be leaders, both business leaders, community leaders, possibly leaders in these countries. And just maybe we can start change in one and then hopefully another. So we've developed this goal, our family has bought into it. It's going to take certainly more than one generation. But we pray that we can get 1 million kids into Christian schools. And if we do that, that these countries can be fundamentally changed going forward. As I said, we went through this very difficult time in '09. The business collapsed. First quarter 2010, Chinese market explodes. So we've been, you know, in that market for 10 years without much success. And all of a sudden, the Chinese market goes from 25% of the world market to 65% of the world construction equipment market. The excavator manufacturer we were on goes from being number 10 to number 1. And we were also on other construction equipment they manufactured. And HUSCO was just propelled out of the recession. Our margins on this export business was 15–20% more than normal. So we started making significant amount of money. We got awarded a whole host of new business for automotive. And the business is just being propelled in a very significant way. And during this time when we invested in the business, I also had commitments for missions. And it was about $700,000 a year that we were supporting missionaries and doing this work. And in '09, when I'm sitting here leveraging myself personally, getting a mortgage, I had to make a decision as to whether or not to continue that. And we had lost a lot of money in the fourth quarter and had overpaid our taxes. So I just said, you know what, we're going to get a tax refund, and I'm going to allocate 100% of that to the mission work. So we more or less were able to sustain that mission work during a very difficult time. And I'm absolutely convinced that the success we had as a business was partly due to the fact that we never wavered from our mission support.